What's up guys, it's Drac. How about a little bit of hype? No? Yes? Alright, so I thought that we would take the first look at the NERF Rush-40. This one hasn't really been explored yet. It is going to be the most affordable way to get into the NERF Hyper line. My friends Aaron and Sophie have already taken a look at all the other ones, and they seem to have their hiccups. The electronic flagship is not accurate at all to speak of, and then something about the slamfire on the larger shotgun-esque kind of variety of the Hyper Blaster seems like they both had a lot of trouble with it. That said, this is the pistol version, and it's pretty chunky for a pistol. We'll do a size comparison in a minute, but this is both a really good thing for Hasbro. This is a huge step in the right direction for them in terms of in-house properties, and also there are definitely some gripes. So I've spent a good chunk of time playing with it, dissecting it, really going through it. The only thing I haven't done is pull out the screws and take a look at the actual internals, but we'll do that in a mod guide later on. Make sure that you hit my bell button, subscribe, throw a like on this video so that you guys catch the modification guide for this in the future. It'll be our first look at any of the Hyper internals outside of some of that sweet, sweet patent information, and that should be pretty exciting. So that is one of the pros, however. If you look at my Rush-40, you can see that there are plenty of screw ports, which means that theoretically this thing should break down into two pieces and let us get a look at the internals. I'm not seeing the telltale signs of solvent weld, but we'll find that out at another time. Again, get subscribed. The overall controls of the blaster are quite simple. It primes using a full slide, and when I say full, I mean the hopper, this clear hopper aperture up top, pulls back with the rest of the blaster. That looks a lot like this. The entire assembly pulls back, compressing a plunger in the back, which is going to be a spring-powered, standard size, kind of sort of plunger volume-esque thing. It actually reminds me a lot of how Rival delivers air to Rival rounds, because if you look down the barrel, past all that pretend knurling, you should be able to see that they've got the standard sort of AR style valve in there. Now, seal's actually pretty good, but there is a safety mechanism on the other side. Safety tells us that this thing does have at least enough power to justify that. It's got to have as much power as Rival, if not, perhaps, maybe even a little more. So flicking that safety off, you can fire, you get a nice little of air coming out of this guy, which does deliver rounds downrange. Now, before we talk about the rounds themselves, because they are fascinating for a plethora of reasons, I want to talk about how Hasbro has put paint on both sides of the blaster, how Hasbro has done a relatively good job with their grip design. It fits me well, and it's obviously designed for nerfers like me, people who are a little bit more into competitive, high velocity, high performance blasters. This is certainly not a performance blaster by any metric in the modern sense. However, it is far more polished than any of the garbage Hasbro's released in the last 2 years, and you can tell that they've definitely put some effort into that. You've got everything from frosted finish on this this clear here into a translucent finish on the hopper so that you can see your overall capacity. You've actually got pretty good tolerances. Elite 2.0 blasters would just break when you did things like this. Your loading mechanism here, this valve, is actually pretty good. That's a good click there and open, so it definitely gives you a nice tactile response. Trigger is a little small, but feels pretty good, and fortunately there are no other controls in here. At least because this is a pistol, there's no need for a mag release or anything like that, so this is just a trigger well and it feels pretty good. The overall grip itself is quite nice, but the thing that I want to compliment them on is, while there's way more tactical rails on here, the kind of faux pick-tinny that Hasbro's known for, like these two, complete nonsense. This one good for a laser or light, this one more of the same. The thing that I do want to compliment them on is that they finally have splurged, in addition to putting paint on both sides of the blaster so that you get a really nice kind of 90s aesthetic neon Hyper logo thing. They also splurged on their mold release finishing. So you get this very, very subtle faux carbon fiber kind of patterning on the gray plastic. And then the thing that I like the most is you've got on the back strap of the grip there, and hopefully this will focus for me, you have this sort of faux hexagon made of triangles. And in addition to just looking cool, I like when the triangles become hexagons because, of course, the restigons just want to be like the bestigons. Moving on to features and controls, like I said, the switch is readily available. If you have large-sized hands, you should be able to access this with your thumb. That's off and on, very intuitive. Down is no-go, up is fire. Pretty easy to do without moving your grip pattern at all. And then priming the blaster, you can do it chicken wing style, which is how my little sister Addie likes to prime her top slides, or you could do it my favorite way, which is like this, a little more dramatic as you kind of pull out and get both arms engaged. It's not a stiff prime. It's definitely like an ages, 10, 12 and up kind of prime. It's pretty on par with Rival, just as an adequate comparison, right? You've got your Kronos, which is also a pretty stiff prime in terms of like if you've only ever used Elite 2.0 blasters, or if you're just used to blasters that, you know, have a little more purchase in terms of like a pump grip. This has plenty of room to grab onto. Like again, the entire slide is its prime, so like that is a lot. You can fit your entire hand on there. No muss, no fuss, no problems. A quick size comparison for those of you that have Chronoses at home and may or may not be looking to go from the best rival pistol around to something a little lower caliber. This is pretty similar, right? You can see there in terms of their overall length, they are almost identical in length. In terms of their overall thickness, they're very similar in thickness. The big difference is that this is an over-under and this is an over-under, right? The mechanism back here feeds directly in line, as does this, but with the hopper assembly on top and this having the internal magazine in the bottom, they're just kind of a flip of one another in terms of where they store their ammo versus where the ball launches. All that is to say, if you have a lot of muscle memory with this, you're going to be aiming a little bit higher and your shot placement will be off as you get used to Hyper. That said, we'll talk more about Hyper accuracy in a minute. In terms of loading the blaster, this is where we have to say a big old shame on you, Hasbro. Coming back from the good old days when you would sometimes double the ammo you would ship blasters with to give us ammo that is so easy to lose and so bouncy and unreliable in so many ways, and then not give us enough to fill the whole blaster, that is a little upsetting. Now, this guy is going to come in at 30 United States dollars, which means that it's pretty premium for a pistol performance package. Alliteration aside, this guy costs half as much even on its worst days and delivers a lot of performance and came with enough rounds to at least load it completely. The Rush-40, which ever so clearly on its aperture door, this is a nice touch here, says 40 rounds max, only ships with 30 rounds. And it's just shameful because I know that they did the same thing with all the other ones where they kind of tried to like alleviate it too. They were like, oh, we'll send all the influencers packages where, you know, we have all these blasters that don't come with enough ammo to fill them. I believe the Surge 50 comes 10 rounds shy, just like this guy. And then if you happen to shell out for the flagship, the Mach 100 only comes with 80 rounds, which means that you're not fully loading these things. And then to kind of gloss over that and get some decent press, they included a bunch of reloads so that the other guys don't seem to mind. I, however, am not so easily swayed and will tell you that at 30 United States dollars, you should be able to load your blaster all the way. That's $1 a ball. Kidding, of course, you also buy the blaster. So I've laid these out. We're gonna see what the capacity looks like. They're in stacks of 5, so it should be really obvious what's going on here. The first 5 load in to the chamber, which I don't know if you guys are gonna be able to see, but it kind of angles downwards and there's sort of a feed ramp in, polished like clean mold release plastic. So that's 5, 10. At 10, we're starting to get out of alignment. 15, 20, 25, and 30. So if you fully load it with what it comes with, you're gonna have plenty of flop. I went ahead and decided to pull out another stack. So here's 5 more, and then 5 more. Whoa! And that's what, it's easy to lose these guys. And with the full 40 loaded up, you can see that there's very little room for improvement. You could probably squeeze another 4 or 5 in there, which has always kind of been Hasbro's MO, is like if it holds X, it'll usually hold 1.1X. So in this case, I would say it's safe to say that your 40 will hold 44. Now I know the hype is building, the anticipation. I want to see it fire too, but I just want to do a quick size comparison and talk about the difference in kinetic energy in these guys. In terms of what their weight is, I'm not going to weigh them just yet. In terms of what they're made of, this is standard foam. It's actually a little different than like the usual Elite foam, but it's kind of a spongy, thick foam. Its bounciness is pretty okay. This is straight up rubber. It's definitely not foam. There's nothing foam about it. People have hypothesized that it might be foam. It is significantly smaller than a rival round, which allows you to compact them much more densely. But in terms of its overall bounciness, being made of rubber, this thing belongs in a gumball machine. And that is interesting for 2 different reasons. I would be lament if I did not mention them because they are important to me. They're important issues to me. And they're things that Hasbro has done well in the past with certain packaging and then not well in the past with other packaging. Just a quick side note, as somebody who's opened like tens of thousands of Magic the Gathering packs, the fact that those aren't recyclable yet is like kind of shameful. That should be recyclable. Wrap them in paper. The bottom line is at major events, Nerf darts are already litter in the best sense, but at least sometimes they will break down, sometimes they will biodegrade, and being made of foam, they're a little less dangerous for certain kinds of wildlife. It is my non-scientific opinion that these are probably never going to biodegrade. And because of how incredibly small and how incredibly bouncy they are, I think that it would be incredibly dishonest to mention that you are going to lose a ton of these outside. They will be lost in tall grass. More to the point, I think that if they ever hit concrete, asphalt, etc., they're going to bounce into a crevice and then roll down that crevice and find their way into all sorts of water systems, septic, etc., blah, 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 blah. And my one big concern, and the reason that I'm not allowing these upstairs in my workshop, and they will be downstairs exclusive, is this is my very best friend, my noble and fierce protector. This is Jinx. You guys love Jinx. Jinx likes playing fetch with Nerf darts. Jinx understands that rival balls are not necessarily food, and even when she puts them in her mouth like that, she cannot swallow them. She'll spit them out in no time. This one, I am not willing to do that demonstration with, and if you're noticing, she's at least a little curious about it. And I'm not here to accuse anybody of anything, but I can say that the one scare that I've had with a Mega Dart, at least it was hollow and it was foam, which meant that it was very compressible and I could get it out pretty easily. I don't know what the standards are for choking hazards versus etc. and so forth or what have you. I know that some of these could be argued that half-length darts would fit in the same sort of issue or realm, but at least it's not a solid rubber ball. I want these nowhere near Lil J over here. I'm actually a little concerned with how that would interact with like parks and SC&C wars, and it's a discussion that I need to have with my admins down the line because nobody's gotten their hands on these yet, and so we just have no idea. All right, so let's see. We talked about the rounds, we talked about the environment, we talked about how much we love their dog. Now that I've done my best to convince you I'm a good person, let's actually fire the thing. And it's definitely got some pop to it. We are, of course, going to be the first people to take this and put it over an actual chronograph and see what sort of FPS it gets. We're also going to put a few rounds downrange, which we will lose in the pursuit of science and seeing what their flight path is. The overall performance of it is, like I said, pretty consistent, pretty powerful in terms of like what it is. It feels pretty comparable in a lot of ways to how, say, a Kronos theoretically sounds when I hit things with it, which is to say that like when I hit the curtain, I kind of get a rough idea of how much energy is being transferred, and it feels relatively similar, which would make sense since the company is kind of floating in the same sort of joule energy delivery sort of rating. But I do want to point out that this Neuralink here does virtually nothing. It actually slows these guys down a little bit. I don't know if it's supposed to increase the accuracy, but I assume the pseudo dimpling on the balls is really responsible for that. As far as double primes go, you can prime once and then you can't prime again. There's a lock down here in the back. Let's go ahead and tilt that down. That would be like the D prime lock that would let you clear a jam under normal circumstances. I don't think you'll be able to see this through the darkness of the camera aperture, but there is a round chambered. Then we prime back, fire both. Nope, one of them fell out. So the taper on the inside of the barrel is clearly designed to only allow one round to be in there at a time. That's sort of the choke point that it delivers that puff of air through, and then everything else is just faux barrel. It doesn't do anything. I guess if you muzzle loaded one in there and had smaller fingers than me, you could fire both at once. I imagine that will have a reduction in your overall efficiency, but the finish on the blaster is great. The overall controls and ergo of it is actually quite good. I'm thrilled that they've gotten their aesthetic game up. I just wish that there was a little bit better value and possibly the ammo was a little bit different, but let's take it downstairs and see if the juice is worth the squeeze. All right, guys, moment we've all been waiting for. We'll fire up the old Crony. It's not a bad looking blaster. It gives me some pretty serious 90s nostalgia vibes. Now, I am interested to see like how this loading ramp is gonna perform over time, if you'll ever have any mischamberings, because tilting it like even level, sometimes the balls don't necessarily roll true into the chamber there. But one is loaded. Once they're loaded, they're pretty good. I wouldn't worry about that too much. The seal on the inside is quite excellent. Let's go ahead and again, just keep in mind that it's lower than it should be. I don't know why it just said 190. 120. Okay, so up to 120 FPS. Must not have been a joke. They're already gone. I don't know how I'm gonna keep track of any of these. Like laser tag arena play with these would be the coolest. Between my assumption that they would glow in black light because they're super fluorescent and the FPS and just overall bounciness, you could be ricocheting shots vortex style. Oh man, with how expensive these rounds are gonna be and how much bounce they're gonna do, how do you keep track of these? So Go ahead and pop it off, put it back in, slap that down. And a decade of shortstop and I still can't. Trying guys. Okay, so I think that that's it's actually remarkably consistent. Nothing but nice things to say about that. That's an average of 120 over 5 shots with very little deviation. I'll put 2 more over. Yep. It just feels like I'm throwing a quarter away every time I do this. Come on. All right, very consistent performance. Let's put a few down range. There's a chance that the Springer is more accurate than the flywheel version. I know that held true in Rival. I'm trying to pick them up as I go because I really don't want Jinx to get too terribly into them. But let's put a few down range. And that one curved pretty straight down. And actually, that was a pretty straight shot. I don't know what it is about the flywheels that make these. Okay, so that one, there's no hop up tab in the blaster. So you're really just kind of getting what you get with the dimpling. And it's pretty clear that as soon as the bounce is going to be interesting. So let's pretend that we're using this for competitive. The tree is about 75, 80 feet away from where we are right now. Let's see if we could hit a target over there. Curved straight down into the fence. Curved straight left away from the tree. Same curve pattern. And that's what I was talking about. No chambering that time. So you really are going to have to agitate this, which I guess if you're like moving right with it isn't going to be that hard, but nope, there it is again. No fire. So you really, are they sticking together? The rounds are the kind of gumminess of them, and I don't know if that'll get better, because I imagine as they get dirtier, and every time I fired one inside and picked it up, it's, had like a piece of hair or some lint or some sock fuzz on it. I don't know if they'll get better or worse as they get dirtier, but right now they're sticking to each other in a way that's making them hard to chamber through. Okay, so that's actually very, very frustrating. Like I said, definitely not a performance blaster. I think I just put a dozen rounds downrange. I was not counting. I can't hit the tree. We can, here, come on, let's close in. We'll give it a serious handicap. That one went left, left again, left again. Finally. All right, so if you compensate, and I guess mine just pulls left, maybe that's the pattern for all of them. I don't know what would control that, but that is a pretty full, pretty comprehensive review. You should get everything you need to know if this is worth $30 when it comes to market late this summer or later this summer, I suppose. Again, I think that the finishing is great. I really like the look of the blaster. The ergo of the blaster isn't bad. I wish the ammo was better. That's really all there is to say about it. It's foam flinging. It's not rubber flinging. It's going to be really interesting to see where these fall into the meta. They're certainly not meta breaking in any sort of way. The biggest advantage that they bring to the table is going to definitely be how much ammo capacity you can fit in one thing. And then Hasbro's not even taking advantage of that. They give you something that can hold a ton of onboard capacity, and they don't give you the capacity to fill it. Just what's going on over there? I can't speak to that. I have no idea. Overall, I still am hyped for Hyper. I think that the line is sweet. I think that it's got a lot of really good things going for it. I'm very excited to try the other models and see what I think of them. The pistol is a good intro, and if you have $30 to burn and you're not already married to Rival, I think that this is a pretty good way to get into it. It'll be really interesting to see what people much smarter than me say about, how they'll interact with pets, how they'll interact with the environment, and so on and so forth. I'm excited to have an open discussion with other event hosts. I host, HVZ End War, and then I host the SENC, both of which are some of the largest organizations of their kind, if not the largest organizations of their kind. And I think that it'll be really interesting, but no one man should decide yes or no as to whether or not these should be, scattered about college campuses. I want to have an open discussion about that in the comment section down below. It would mean a ton to me if you guys subscribe so that you catch my internals view. And then just as a final thing, I want to thank everybody who supports the channel. It makes videos like this possible. possible. I want to thank everybody who buys merch over at foamproshop.com, because if you're not plugging, you're not in business. This t-shirt is actually our old Drac logo. It was just cleaned today. There's a brand new Drac logo over on the shop if you want to support the content, support the craft. And then a huge shout out and thank you to the guys over at Verilus. They are a clothing company that makes alternative clothing that Vamplet me would have drooled over. And they sent over a complete outfit actually, which I'm super stoked about. These are specifically shorts designed for foam sort of flinging and combat. They're like boffer style, but they work great for Nerf. And then this is a pocket belt, which would be kind of like a modern take on the Sporin, I almost feel, but because it's got this magnet here, it actually makes for a really great kind of fashionable dump pouch. And then more than anything, I'm a pretty big sneakerhead, and these are their brand new Skyfall sneakers. They're all leather, but they're 2 different combinations, and they are ridiculously comfortable. They're like mid-top basketball shoes designed for foam flinging. They're pretty cool. So shout out to them. Thank you so much for sending the outfit over. Video isn't like sponsored or anything. They definitely are not sponsoring Nerf content over at the Verilus clothing company, but I wanted to thank them on one that I knew people would definitely watch. Plus, the fit is lit. Like, thanks so much for watching, guys. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think of Hyper. Let me know which one of these you want me to review next. And then please subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss all the exciting modification content. We just figured out a way to get these rounds up in FPS. And I think you guys are going to be pleasantly surprised by that if you're old school cool in particular. Much love. Blast on. Drac out.